Hey, Adrian.
So, sorry, a quick question. You told me something that we
Yes.
stream to something different.
Apologies to the huge Gregor audience. I do believe we had a technical glitch and went wrong with one of the wrong
But
events.
I Substack, but are you sure?
I believe there is one version of the stream which is the pushing your organization or towards AI or not that you have scheduled for December.
Yeah.
I believe we are live on that one as well, and the expectations for that one have been set for December. But I see there's a huge audience on there responding.
What? That's not good.
That's not good. Yes.
But how? I have never set it up.
I have not set it up either. So, but it happened. So maybe glitch on Substack, maybe glitch on our end, maybe glitch in Restream. Warrants investigation. I just wanted to let you know because I got the notification, and I'm pretty sure Gregor is not here today. So for those of you expecting Gregor and Adrian to talk about AI in your organizations, I'm afraid that is still scheduled for December, and this is not a pre-show for that.
I'm not sure if we should do this, to be honest.
Could you maybe take that one offline?
Yes. Sorry for that, guys. That was a glitch that is not supposed to happen.
Yeah, just to set out expectations.
Yes, yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
folks. Everybody else who's on Crafting Tech Teams or on Adrian's normal channel or on LinkedIn or on YouTube should be fine. I believe we are still live on the other channels. I saw that stream go offline. It did send out notifications, so it pulled out an audience. So even though it was nice to see that lovely number, it's not fair to the audience for the stream that you'll be having with Gregor on December. And I'm sure Gregor will want to talk to you about this.
Yeah. But the problem is I haven't set up anything regarding Substack. I just got an invitation from your side that I should accept, nothing else.
Yeah, I think this was a Substack glitch. I think when we invited each other into the rooms, it made some assumptions it shouldn't have.
Just go ahead, introduce the topic. I need to write it down. Sorry.
Sure. So today we're having sort of off-script discussion. This is going to be a community-driven discussion again. Adrian and I will present a topic of deadlines and how deadlines come to be in teams, what deadlines might look like in your teams, and how they work, how they don't work, and what to replace them with. Ultimately, we can all agree that motivation to get things done is good. Deadlines are often on the side of doing more harm than good in the sort of default habitual way of using them, and if it's recurring. And there's alternatives which are like, it's a solved problem, primarily like how to plan a team to be productive. But for some reason, it's not intuitive. It's not the default mode of operation. Like the simplest, clearest way of getting work done is not the default in our industry. I wonder why that is. I honestly don't know. But that means that there's always a large audience that is available to learn some simple tricks about how to get things done and not drive your engineers crazy. This is primarily for the leadership side. So if you're a engineering leader who has to interface with product leadership, or if you're an engineering leader who is managing expectations with external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, or just driving your engineers crazy with discussions about estimates, this is for you.
Okay, Gregor Osterschek just told me that he saw the.
Yeah, of course. It's sent on.
I just explained it to him, so he's wondering.
Yeah.
That something is not working.
Yeah.
So in fact, I have never set up that one, and it is strange.
I think Substack auto chooses from one of your scheduled streams, and this looks like a bug because I didn't set it up. You didn't set it up. I didn't join yours. I didn't join and I also didn't invite you specifically with a pre-scheduled event. So this seems like a Substack glitch, like a platform glitch, not a user glitch. Worth investigating with the support team. Okay.
Okay, never mind. So it's clear. So sorry, guys. Sorry for the confusion today. Multi-streaming is not simple with the current platforms. It is not.
No,
It
it's
is
not.
a wisdom of its own. Okay, sorry. Now I'm here. With
It's all good. It's all good. I know how stressful it gets when you're accidentally. I also.
I accidentally just streamed to, I don't know, 70,000 people message out. Right? It's a little bit like that's something. That's an outage actually. Well,
Yes, it's a big hoopla. Okay. So
where's the LinkedIn event? There it is. Okay, deadline detox. Let's there it is. Let's focus a little bit on that one. So the initial idea for this event.
he's back.
What's that?
It's all good. It's all good. I just said you're back.
The initial event, so the idea for this event was about that we have end of year, and at the end of the year, you see a little bit how a company functions. That's one of the things, and you see that like people treat December and January as some form of reset area where we think of, we need to change something right now. So next year, everything will be better. But the idea is that we actually say we change something, say we get something done or something like that. And in reality, we postpone it into the next year. And then we have next year, and actually nothing happened so far. That's a little bit like the reset we see. People don't even remember what we have done in December. It is more like that we take a look at what our baseline was in the entire year before. So in reality, we don't change quite a lot. And when we now see that in the tech industry, we have one big issue here, and that is that we actually we see that companies don't really, let's say, okay, let's take a look at how we get things done. So let's say the GSD mentality or something like that, and how we can improve that for next year. So what tech leads normally would do is like, okay, this is the status quo. What can we change in order to be better next year? So since we postpone that, nothing happens except that we say that we want to change, but we don't really do that. Because if we want to change, then we actually need to change everyone who is involved, not just the process, right? So one of the aspects is that you need to change the baseline of something in order to be changed next year, which means that, so we have homeostasis, we always revert back to the current status, how we actually are wired as an individual and as a team and as a system. So if we don't change the system today, if we don't change the habits today, they won't be different in January. In January, we will be facing new demons, new deadlines, and new issues, right? Which will suck us in, and we are suddenly again in a deadline-driven environment. We have never detoxed. We have just taken a vacation. That's the difference. We have just taken a vacation. So people say that, we say that, okay, this is year's end. Next year we will do everything better. It's a false promise to yourself, right? So that topic is present everywhere. That's not a tech lead issue, right? But tech leads have this issue because that's basically a litmus test for the end of the year where we actually see what happens, right? We have the issue in the entire year that we don't do something, but it becomes visible from December to January. In the third week of January, all good intentions are gone. So we don't change anything because there's so much new stuff going on. We don't have time to do that. And next time we say, yeah, we will do that next year. It is like next year. It's always next year. But what can we do to actually improve right now, today, and tomorrow, not next year, next month, or in the future? So, the short-term habituous changes as a team. So, for example, that teams are used to work with tickets. Tickets are used in feature factories, often artificial deadlines defined somewhere else. We are in this situation. How do we get out of there, right? So what do we need to change in order to make that a change of a baseline? And no matter when we do the test again for ourselves or the review, the assessment, we will see that we actually have changed to the better because our baseline raised a little bit. So we have removed, for example, the need for a deadline because we closed the gap between business and development. So we made, let's say, the software engineers more the core of actual software development, which is not the case in most tech teams. So it's seen as a department, those kind of things. How is it when we take a look at your coaching clients and these kind of the people you work with? Is that actually a big thing in the end of the year that people want to change? They have intentions to do so, and how is it working?
Specifically, when it comes to planning and deadlines, usually the December to January period is so seasonal, so sort of laissez-faire that the normal control mechanisms of a dysfunctional organizations usually get tested in this period, and they sort of give up trying to control, and then it gets replaced by the actual default that works. And if they have never explored it, then the actual default is just pure chaos. So they willingly schedule time off and on-sites and off-sites and company parties to sort of make use of that chaotic period without really trying to solve it. That's sort of the majority of the companies that I see. They just accept that it's going to be a slow month, it's going to be weird, people are going to take time off, so they try not to fight it, they just work with the chaos, which I think is a very pragmatic approach. The other side is I've never seen sort of the New Year's, the New Year's resolutions equivalent in Teams. However, I have seen a lot of companies that are using OKRs usually have Q4 targeted for like week 2 of January or just before Christmas, and that drives everybody crazy. So for those organizations that I usually ask, when we're doing OKRs in a new company or when we're just introducing it with my help, or usually a company that does coaching also does other things in the same time. So usually when they bring me on, they also try OKRs at around the same time. So it has happened more than a few times already. The timeline coincided, and I always ask, okay, when does your Q4 end? Because if Q4 for the organization ends December 31st or like January 1st, it's super disruptive. Like that Q4 OKRs are like la la land. I find it much more productive to have Q4 be angled, into the fiscal year, so November, December, January, and it's a lot easier to get things done.
I actually like the idea to don't see end of December as end of a very large period or something, because it actually doesn't work with the human mind. So we as humans, we like to work towards something which is done, but our business is never done. So we are in the process. That's the big difference between project and process. Process never ends. Project has a definitive end. And we shouldn't treat our team's efforts to improve with a definitive end at the end of the year. And that doesn't work at all. And I think that is one of the things we really need to get better as humans in general. And
so usually the end of the year comes with a large disruption period, usually December 24th till January 5th ish, usually. So people have like end of year deadlines, like stopgaps in their sprints, stopgaps in their roadmap. They have like a huge stop sign.
Yeah, because everyone is away and everyone wants to use it, especially in Europe.
So they want full closure on it, and that's super unnatural for a organization that is continuous, especially if you're the kind of organization that has special deals for that period. Like if you're super active during the festive period, if you're doing, and if you're in e-commerce, or if you're in any form of transportation or equivalent or holiday, then or entertainment business, then you're booming on when people are off, right? So I used to work in advertising and esports. Christmas is not Christmas. Christmas is like Christmas Eve. There's zero, but then everything around it is just it's just this huge wave of digital attention, advertising, entertainment. So like it's no joke. Like not everybody is off on Christmas, especially not the more digitized industries. Adrian, how would you like to connect this now back to the conversation of deadlines, of that habitual build-up of getting things done, but also not spending not spending too much time on
Okay.
the, let's say, the
So I
festive
think
side.
one of my big things, big peeves in this year were that with all the tech leads, all the CTOs, and team leads, we were working on how to get things better
Mm-hmm.
regarding deadlines. So, and the only solution, really the only solution, was to create another baseline. So we need to up the baseline by saying
Mm-hmm.
that ownership must be a thing. And you only create ownership by actually pulling the people together. So not just the team, but the teams. So let's say there are the teams who are, very often like very customer centric. So a little bit further away from the development and not seen as the actual development.
Mm-hmm.
They are more seen in the vision and mission area, where the practical tactical area is the development. And
Mm-hmm.
the efforts were always going into that direction. Why I'm saying that is because otherwise you can't solve that issue by tweaking Jira. It is not possible. I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a way to do that effectively because you always, homeostasis again, revert back to the idea because when you have the stressful times, you
Mm-hmm.
have the CEO or the other people like having new ideas and they promise this new idea to a new client and then they say, "Do you get that done?" Yeah, I get that done. And then you basically you tweak the deadline, and that's
It,
what you have done. That is what we see so often, especially in European and German companies who are still working top down.
what I'm
Yeah.
So in organizations that they're heavily using tools like Jira, Linear, etc., or Kanban, or just like some equivalent of Kanban boards that four three columns, moving left to right, and using sort of deadlines to motivate people, or using some form of GS, GTD, get things done mentality. What they usually miss is to look for the absence. Like when I'm interfacing with engineering teams, I often also coach product leaders to help elevate both sides of, hey, I'm training your engineering leaders. Let's now also talk to the product leaders to set correct expectations to the new abilities and the new capabilities of the engineering leads, right? So we don't keep doing the old things. And one of the things that what product organizations often miss is that the tools that are used for issue tracking are being used by two different groups of people. One group of people is there to manage the tickets, create them, and move them forward. And there's another group of people who are viewing the tickets. They are looking to extract situational awareness from the tickets. The problem is that the people who are moving and creating the tickets are optimizing the tool for moving and creation, and the people who are looking at situational awareness for themselves, they're optimizing it for viewing, for analysis. The problem is the people who are creating the tickets usually don't look at that other view. So they don't actually know to them about what do I need to move, what did I forget, what do I need to work on is visible. What's not visible to them is they don't know what the stakeholders are looking at. And usually they don't use it in a dual mode. Because what a stakeholder, what I always encourage engineering leaders to look for in people do this with whip limits and deadlines and how far, like what is the estimate? Like we need an estimate so we can set a deadline. Then we need to have a progress estimate so we can know how percentage along the like it's just right. It's just crazy town. What they often miss is that it's much easier to look for absence of movement. The reason why we do tickets is because we want something to move forward. And really, what we should be looking for when you're analyzing a team's progress is the absence of movement. One of the first things I always set up, and I help engineering product leaders set up, is a board that responds to no movement, right? For example, a ticket that was created with the expectation of it'll show progress in the next 2 days. If it wasn't updated in the last 2 days, it'll show up on a alert board. And that is usually much more pragmatic and much more easier to get things done because, hey, if we had 40 tickets in a sprint that is 2 weeks long, our expectation is that quite a handful need to move together at around the same time. And if we don't see that cadence, that rhythm of movement, then we have set up a project that even if it goes well, it will go 0%, 0%, 0%, 0%, 0%, 0%, 0%, and then 100% the last day. And that's La La Land. And even if you manage to get that last hump onto 100%, the amount of stress that the lack of visibility causes is going to drive people to do all kinds of micromanaging things. And so the whole point here is to just focus on visibility and to getting things done side, to getting things done about the deadlines is the whole deadline detox thing, is that deadlines are one of the most toxic ways of forcing visibility onto a team who doesn't understand this problem.
No, people work towards the deadline. That's one of the issues we have discussed often.
Yes.
So you don't optimize for ownership and actually improving the product, getting the engineers closer to the clients, understand better why we're doing this. These kind of things doesn't exist because you only try to get something done which passes the acceptance criteria a dreaming person has set up 5 weeks ago, right, for a different problem actually, which is maybe not the same anymore, and you only try to pass it to receive something back which may be updated with new information. That's the idea of the flow, and that doesn't work. And I hear that very often, that people say that during mentorings, during coachings, that tech leads say, the person we've talked about is leaving company, just wanted to take a look into other things. And I always ask, like, have you asked about what actually went wrong or what was the reason? And people then, or tech leads, always respond to me like playing it a little bit down. It's like, well, it's just they want to do something different. In reality, when I then ask them to talk with the people in detail, what was the reason? They shall be open, no harm, these kind of things. Sometimes they do that. And in most cases, people are very unhappy with the currents. It is always the currents thing. They don't want to be in this treadmill anymore. And it's not about the money, because especially in the European sector, you don't really make huge leaps between companies.
Yeah.
It's socialistic.
The company has to be publicly traded.
Yeah.
on one of the American stock exchanges to sort of be in the higher tiers of payment, because your total compensation.
Normal engineers don't really get something different, because
you can work as a European for an American company that has that kind of gig set up already, or for a European subsidiary of such an organization. Google is a prime example. Quite a few of my friends are engineers in Google. Like, they have moved. Basically, to become an expat and just move to the country where Google's office is, and they just live there. But that's a different story. Generally, with horizontal momentum in your career, you're not really benefiting a lot from like targeting a FAANG company, at least not in Central and Eastern Europe.
Yeah, but that's not so. It is not the big reason to change a company. It's not money here in Europe.
Yeah,
it is mainly purpose. So people, it's like, even though they don't know its purpose or they don't name it, they feel it. It's like, I want to see something different. Why? In a tech company where you have 20 engineers, an interesting product, you have so much you can do with that product. You can be creative. You can put your own ownership and creativity in so many places. Still, the people go because they are not burned out, but exhausted with what they do. And this is the interesting part, why I always try to urge to not create a rigid environment where people are slowly grinding themselves out, right? Or off, in that case. And and then you suddenly see this person going, and you need to replace this person. And in most cases, this replacement isn't really a let's say a benefit for you. So
And you
very
as a
often,
leader don't really learn the lesson. Like you will just repeat
yeah,
the same
nothing
mistake.
changes. The
Yeah.
baseline, the homeostasis, we're always
Yeah.
getting back to the same thing, because we
When I
see that
say
we see that as a oh, this person will leave
yeah,
anyway because it is like that. No, it is not like that. You are
Mhm.
simply not a leader who is able to create that culture, which is interesting for the people to work in. You have everything technically, budget wise, but you
Mhm.
don't do something with it,
Yeah.
right? That's the issue.
What are the sort like the main um, pressure points where deadlines come into play with why people feel this way, why engineers feel this way about their leaders, why leaders feel the need to impose deadlines? It's because they don't really have a good um, most organizations that I work with that seek my help, they don't have a well-established relationship with how they are how they are having conversations about value and delays, right? Because they usually just talk about priorities, like stack ranking them from 1 to 1 million and just have a backlog.
Mhm.
Like that's I think every organization to some degree does that well, but that is the ultimate anti-goal if you want to get things done, right? Because then those prioritized backlogs, 90% of those backlogs are not actionable. And then people end up wasting their talent, wasting their time, wasting their, I don't know, weekends discussing, working on, prioritizing, analyzing, refining, aligning, grooming non-actionable items
Mhm.
in the hopes that something magical will make them actionable. And it is that sort of lethargy that causes then people to feel unfulfilled, or they sort of have a feeling of well, what are we doing, this doesn't really make sense, whose fault is this, probably leadership, it's like a ceremony. And they sort of disenchant themselves, they give their power away, they make themselves feel powerless in the sort of this what usually gets called some form of corporate grind, or sort of roadmap hell, or some form of just following goals and deadlines for the goals and deadlines sake without really making any progress. What the core problem of this process is that deadlines are used to express a sense of urgency so that the team takes it seriously. So if I use a metaphor, let's say all of your projects are impossible projects. All of them are impossible. When you start them, they will seem impossible,
Yeah.
right? So there are two ways how you think about deadlines. I will start with the wrong one, and then I will help with the coaching reframe. The wrong one is to ask, here's the impossible project. How much can we get done by this time? Or ideally, can we get the entire project done in this time window? And why not? And what needs to change?
Mhm.
That is the wrong way about it, right? Because you are always keeping the impossible project in your head. And the more you will work on the impossible project, the more the entire scope and like whatever you analyze will get bigger, right? You analyze problems, you will see more problems. You analyze coaching, you will see more coaching offers. You analyze, I don't know, stack ranking every
You see
single
what you
employee.
focus on. Yeah.
You will create more data on what you focus on. If you hyper obsess with timelines about a project, it will just go on longer and longer and longer and longer, because if you quantify every possible scenario, it will stretch on till infinity. Especially if you spend a lot of time in analysis, data gathering, grooming the data, surveying people, asking people for estimates, God forbid, right? Now, the correct reframing that immediately, like you don't need to go on like a 40-hour course or some like weird 2-year leadership certification. The simple reframing that you can do immediately is that to just acknowledge this is an impossible project that we cannot do in this time frame. What version of that project that is user facing or stakeholder valuable can we build with these resources? Like, what piece of that thing can we extract, or maybe it's completely different, not a prototype, just what piece can we build in the entire budget, and then go shrink it down. What piece can we build in half of it? What piece can we build in a third of it? Until you get down to the core idea of what can we do this week and what can we do tomorrow. You want everybody who's on the engineering team, and please don't do this with like a 40 group team, because a 40 member group of several teams, their core problem of thinking like this is that the group is too large.
Yes.
You need to be able to shrink it down so that you can cluster away the big problem rather than putting 40 people on the entire project, right? So let's say it's 5 to 10 people, 5 to 15
Dunbar's
people.
number, actually, yeah.
Yeah, Dunbar's number, 5 to 15 people. You gotta shrink this down until every engineer, at least the more senior engineers, and you should predominantly most of your staff should be non-junior for these kinds of tight resource experiments, and to just keep repeating this conversation in a very lo-fi way until everybody who can move the needle understands what is possible and what is expected of them in a day, in a week, in a month, and whatever that timeline budget that you're playing with is. And then you start building it backwards. Okay, if we're right about what we can build tomorrow, then we're probably on the right track to build that thing in a week, and then you stop. And then you only focus on planning the stuff that is from this side of the timeline that is actionable, and make sure you stop focusing and speculating about things way outside of your timeline, because the confidence of building small things will very quickly expand how far into the future you're confident. At the beginning of such a project, your confidence level is basically 4 hours. Like, you start something 4 hours from now, people are already running around like headless chickens, right? So you need to build something, you need to prove something, you need to test something, you need to get data, you need to tighten the loop so fast that your confidence in just the planning process itself grows extremely rapidly. How the deadline people go wrong usually is they start a big project, they say it's either one sprint, 1 month, or 1 quarter. They start with a quarterly roadmap, and then they kick it off. They spend weeks planning it, then they kick it off, and then they don't freaking look at it until the end of the quarter. And that drives everybody crazy. That's how those problems happen, because they never really reverse engineer it from what is possible today. And even in the get things done mentality, the whole point of the get things done mentality is to filter out planning items, discussion items that are not actionable, right? So that you can immediately identify, we don't know that, not actionable. Let's not do a decision based on no data. No data, not actionable. No data, not actionable. No data.
That's actually a good point that you mentioned, that GSD is not meant to let's get the board done. It is let's get the signals done.
Yes.
So what is important? Define the signal. So let's say you have 10 open tickets, which is normally way more than that, but 10 open tickets. And you define that this is the one ticket we definitely need to get done today. Not having a deadline, but we say ourselves that, okay, that's realistic, reasonable, and it makes sense to make that. So let's focus that we get this done. And if we get done more, okay, but we do like that. Not like saying for the next weeks, we have defined that each ticket that needs to be done on Monday, that on Wednesday, that on Thursday, and that on Friday, 2 p.m., something like that. So, but these kind of things don't make sense.
However, it's not important. We can even use that framework, but the point of the deadline is not to actually get it done. The point of the deadline is to highlight what we are looking for is not for it to be done. What we're looking for is we're being pessimistic. What we're looking for is absence of movement, right? So you generally don't need these deadline, like these daily, right? Daily deadline things of this ticket on that day, this ticket on that day, because that drives people crazy. Because the day to ticket pairing is inaccurate next week. So it doesn't make sense. And somebody then has to keep doing that, and somebody's then estimating or breaking up work way too early, way out of context. But the important thing is that if you have, usually what people do is they plan a sprint. It sort of looks okay. It idles at the beginning. Then there's no movement. And there's like these pre-weekend jumps or post-weekend jumps. And then at the end of the sprint, like half of it gets completed overnight, and then half of it is rollover into the next sprint. The whole point is that if you're doing any kind of project management, and if you want deadlines, the point isn't to reach the deadline. The point is to break up the project in such a way that you see smooth movement of something, of some ticket, of some issue every day.
Yeah.
Right? That is the whole point. The point of the deadlines isn't to motivate the engineer to build it faster, because that's how it's perceived, even if it's not how it's how it's
It is what people see.
It's what people see and what they experience.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. But the whole purpose of breaking up the work is to communicate what granularity of information frequency we want. Right? So I would like an update on the project tomorrow. And if there's nothing to update, that is a problem. Right? If there's no progress to report on.
Yeah, but this is not how tech teams actually work with deadlines. So deadlines is really like, have you got it done? Or if you haven't got it done, I need to talk to other people. That's an issue. That's
why do you say that's not how they work?
I never saw that.
So because I think we agree, but I want to know the.
I think the issue is that people don't act like this. So the deadline is the bridge between two departments. So it is unusual that developers set themselves deadlines.
So there is a handover ceremony, and the deadline is communicating
contract between departments.
Yes,
and people really are afraid. It's like when I know that from my agency time, when another company called me, the typical PO, and then said, we need to get something done. We need to talk. They moved the deadline, closer to today. We need to talk immediately. These kind of things.
So what you're talking about is resource management, where there is a large project that has dependencies across two different siloed organizations that do not share resources and are not in the same team. This is very important. Because if you and I are working on the same team and we have a handover, we don't need a deadline, because we're working on the same thing.
Yeah, it's done when it's done. So we try to get it done, but it's done when it's done.
And not so much that it's done when it's done, but you are ready to pick up the moment I'm done. Right? So that's what's really being optimized. Because a department that does resource management to this degree, basically what they're communicating is, if you're done sooner, that's not helpful because we're not ready. And if you're done later, that's a problem because we have nothing to do. So it creates this really tight contract where the correct handover is only smooth on a really narrow window on the calendar, which is completely
you need to move all deadlines if one is failing. That's the typical red line in the gun chart.
Snowball effect on the entire organization, because how you really get them, is to actually expand the deadline and say, well, we don't do hard handover, but when we have 50% progress and we break up the project so we can see that, we are preparing integration with the other team. And then as we get closer, we increase the rate of integration. If it's extremely large enterprisey, if it's actually moving hundreds of people in a different direction, then of course, yes, you do it like this. But normally for small organizations, what you do is you just make sure the people who have the most risky handover, that they're on the same freaking team. Like that for the sort of ending period of a project. So on a quarterly project, the ending period would be the last month of one and the first month of the next one, is for those two people to work on the same project. So it has nothing to do with the deadline, but more about the presence of mind are the two people or the two team leads who are doing a handover or some kind of verification or some kind of validation, right? So if maybe the engineers are handing something off to the marketing team, or maybe the engineers are building something and 10% of that delivery is used for a demo on some sales.
Yeah, but very often the case, like we have planned follow-up steps and you need to get this done until,
Yeah.
and it was
Then
already
we take
closed
over,
when we
and then
started.
yeah.
These kind of things are very bad for everyone because you create something which is very fragile, as you said, very narrow on point. Most of I would even say most Gantt style, that's a typical red line Gantt, so critical path Gantt chart thing.
Yeah.
They are not working out if you work longer than several weeks on that one. It basically
Of
doesn't.
course.
So,
And they require constant grooming,
and
constant
you
updating.
always have like the real time is always set before you only. The problem is you don't know it. So there will be a specific amount of resources per day available. You will work on that. If you have a mature team which is willing to work on that, it won't be faster anyway like that. So you want to keep qualities, you want to do that, and it's better to take a look week by week in an open discussion. Where are we? What can we expect next week? And when can we tell the marketing team to start with the planning? Not planning the marketing and then tell the development department, okay, we need to get this done because we have planned this. That's the wrong way.
Most of the teams I work with work much better once we get them off of sprints or whatever their equivalent is. Usually they're too long, and usually they're just ceremony. They're just theater. Primarily because of what you said, because it's creating these like weird expectations.
Commitment theater, yeah.
It's commitment theater, right? Because it is inviting and baiting and trapping, really. All of the people who are very smart and very communicative and like very like the engineers are the most systems thinking nuts, like geeks about like they of all people should really understand the complexity of the noise and that happens in communication. Is that when you start communicating like this and create deadlines, you start communicating with the speculative future, right? So you're communicating with what you should have at that point, and it baits the engineers to completely ignore what they have right now, right? So when I get a team to get away from this like sprint theater, the first thing that we do with product people, with tech leads, with CTOs is go away from estimation talk and get closer to continuous integration talk, which is what is done like working software that is not in the user's hands today. As in what is kind of done but needs some polish and isn't a feature branch. That's what we need to talk about. It's those, and why are we creating expectations that that's okay? What is on that feature branch that's 3 weeks old, right? Like it's those kinds of conversations.
Why do we need expectations when we do something which is yet to develop? That's the problem.
Exactly.
So we are developers, not it's not a production line. When I have a production line, I know this.
Right?
Yeah, when I have a production line which produces per hour 10 items per hour, right? Then you know exactly, okay, I can expect 10 things per hour, and I will, calculate in a little bit percentage.
But that's still projection. I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted to say, guys. Anyway, yeah.
No, but that's still projection. As in, even if you have a smooth machine, what you will have at the end of the day is still projection, because you're still talking about the end of the day. What's worth looking at is what was produced in the last 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days that has not been rolled out. What is not merged? What is not fully tested? What is not fully understood? Where is the team hesitant on like even merging the production?
But you wouldn't, if you would have a good process, you wouldn't have those.
No, but that's what I mean.
You don't start work when you have undone work.
An organization that is using deadlines primarily for their measure of project planning always has these problems. I have not seen a organization that uses deadlines so heavily on like a sprint cadence or some kind of scrumified scrumfall cadence. They always have integration problems. I'm talking about small engineering teams in Europe, especially, or interfacing with the US. Most teams have these problems. Like the teams that don't have these problems don't need the deadlines because they're not speculative, right? For them, working software is on production. There isn't a grace period where, I don't know, the working software that is not in production has to marinate for some time to get reviewed and rolled out, and then it's rolled out, and then nobody's using it, and then the marketing team needs to make a push, and like, because it's for a lot of organizations, the rollout of a feature is actually part of some marketing or sales or product ceremony or with some client-facing conversation, and it's the process that's not handled well, right? That's why they need a deadline, because they want to create materials to continue the conversation. But it's not on the same team. There's two different teams that don't understand each other. They speak a different language, and the only common denominator between the two teams is the calendar. And that's a very low standard for two departments to be communicating with each other.
But now, how can we improve that? That's the actual topic. So we have to just define now that deadlines are a very bad idea. So how we do improve that? So how do we up the baseline? That is the question. Because if we don't up the baseline of the team, we won't.
How do you up it? How do you? So not in your own team, because you are so experienced that you don't have 90% of the problems that are making this difficult. So let's focus on your team, like somebody you're mentoring. What advice do you give them primarily?
So first of all, the entire team itself, so everything below the tech lead, needs to start to learn bottom-up ownership and maturity, which means that there is no finger pointing like the business people, the marketing people said this and that. You need to work on that. So that's the first thing, right? That's really working from the leadership person towards the others, role model, credibility, become a credible team towards others. That's the baseline. You won't change anything if that isn't the case. No? Then, and that's the other part of the tech lead, who is mostly CTO in my case. So it's actually a person who can do something about that. Should talk to his or her peers. Hopefully peers, sometimes reports, because CTO should stay next to the CEO in reality, but it's not often the case. But you should bridge that, which means that you should tell them openly, we change this way, and I will make, because I'm responsible for that entire technical flow, for that production of that thing. And we need to bridge that we stop here at the top, right? At the top of the pyramid, we stop dreaming ourselves some deadlines and just playing bingo here, right? And then telling that via a ticket to a person we never talked to them, right? Instead, we include everyone. So make the actual, the cadence how we work a problem of the engineering team, which then reports it in a mature way to the people, so that the CEO, PO, PM, whoever is there communicating with the actual people is actually able to do something with that. So instead, my example, because that is very often the case, instead of waiting, so instead of defining all steps which come after the development, you start with the development first, become clarity, become a feeling for how we work currently, that on some point in time, we actually start with things. We can prepare, but we don't commit to something we don't know yet. And that is something it's mostly the tech, as I said, mostly the CTO, sometimes engineering managers, but mostly the CTO, who needs to translate that on a communication level in the entire org. It is not possible to do that just by a team leader. When it's one team, you have 3 teams of developers and several other departments. It is not possible on the team lead level to make a change. We have tried that several times. It basically, no, it's not possible. You don't have the power as that single person. You need to get to actually the point which is sitting in between those worlds and get them back together. So the only way to actually up the baseline as a company is to get the people together and make part of the baseline you fall back to that, okay, these people are pushing from below, right, from bottom up, and we have these people who are steering at the top. But you need to have both at the same time, not just the steering people and the other just rushing towards a deadline.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing they focus
on. Or even worse, and not just rushing against the deadline, but also stop rushing against the deadline when they realize they can't meet the deadline.
Yeah, because that needs to be spoken up. Then
that's the worst of that is then the worst case scenario of we have a deadline and people assume, yeah, after the deadline it's over. So if they admit defeat early and they give up, they lose motivation.
Yeah.
And then after the deadline, they have to keep working on it with some new weird deadline that then they don't take seriously, and then it just. What I do with a lot of my teams is I ask them to, not ask them. Well, so there's a fine line of what needs to be happening in order to be on time. So everybody needs to have an understanding of what on time looks like. So I usually do pre-mortems with them, and some kind of war room scenario, which is if everything goes well. Let's take the previous week. Let's take like a normal flow chart. If the team has very very chart heavy people, we use flow charts for flow diagrams. If the team is mostly engineers, we just use release cadences. Or like, it's either it's either GitOps or linear. Like that's usually my tools of choice because it's what's most natural for the people with the lowest cadence.
Mm-hmm.
What I ask them to do is to stop answering question of when will it be done, and start being proactive, right? So because the question baits them to be reactive, they don't answer the question unless somebody asks, and it's also the wrong question to ask, right? Because what that team lacks is the lack of saying, we've rolled this out, this we're rolling out today, that we're rolling out tomorrow. That is the information. What do we need to discuss? Right? So it changes the conversation from, like when stuff goes out, that's just data. What decisions do we need to make? Is the order in which it goes out correct? Is the cadence correct? Is there anybody who needs to be informed that doesn't know about this? Should we delay one of them? Should we reorder one of them? Should we pull somebody in? What happens if we're ahead of schedule? Like, is there something that we can do to improve the project, or would that just mess things up? That's the conversation that needs to happen. Most teams get stuck in answering the question of how long and when and what do we want and is what we want possible in that time frame. Most teams are so reactive that they get stuck in this conversation, unaware that that is just data filtration, and there's an actual conversation about the release planning and the form of the release and the quality of the release that just gets never discussed because they never get off of this treadmill. There is an outer loop around this loop, and the whole point of this loop is just to produce output that enables outcomes.
But this needs to, the team needs to, or a team needs to create the desire to speak up in that moment, and
absolutely,
to be okay.
Absolutely. So somebody, I usually look for a leader who is either a dominant speaker or who is a natural complement with the product person who is asking the question, to build trust first about, hey, don't wait for the question, just be proactive. Like, preempt the question and send them an update, for example, before the sprint planning, so they have nothing to ask. Because then if you tell them this is the information I have, this is the information I don't have, you tell them up front that there's no point discussing this on the planning. This is the data, and we need to discuss actually something much more tangible, which is the plan correct? Is the cadence correct? Is this data allowing us to make actionable decisions with regards to planning, with regards to rollout, with regards to release? Or do we need to re-architect something? Do we need to cut some features? Do we need to pull in a different cohort for the first test group, right? So maybe that will be interesting for the product discussions, and not the actual estimation ceremony and theater regarding product. I saw your message, Adrian.
Mm-hmm. The deadline.
So to wrap things up, primarily what I'm focusing on is I'm always looking for truth seeking in a product engineering organization. I want to know how much of their conversations are based on data versus how much is it speculation. It's like, yeah, it's almost done, maybe 2 more days. To me, that's pure speculation. Because I want to know what input is necessary to ensure the team is on time. So, for example, if they have clear expectations and the project was broken down with somebody who understands the domain, that is an input that guarantees a high chance of being fast. If that input is not there, I'm assuming the team will not know what to do day one, so they will probably have a refinement session day one. So they cannot possibly deliver day one. Right? So I'm looking for the lack of a high quality input that a high quality team would need to guarantee delivery. And then once a team has the best possible input that we can give them, what's the chance of the team screwing up? Like, what's the chance of somebody coming in and disrupting the team? What's the chance of the team entertaining multitasking? What's the chance of, maybe the priorities are clear, but there's a tasking issue. Maybe somebody gives the team 4 priority number ones, and they don't have a standard operating procedure for how to resolve it.
But sometimes teams themselves mess up. So
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you give them
Absolutely.
the authority to decide that for themselves and the responsibility, people will take it and just do whatever they want.
Absolutely.
So that is the reason why you need to prove your maturity, that you actually can handle that in a responsible way.
And then on top of that, there is the pure resource management, which is you're assuming some general baseline PTO usage, you're assuming some general baseline illnesses, especially in this time of year. You assume some general, base time for kids getting sick or market trends or Cloudflare will have an outage, right? So there are just these baseline keeping the lights on activities that you then account for once you have made sure, like, okay, in general, how successful is this team when we give them high quality inputs, and what is the likelihood of us giving them high quality inputs? Right? High quality input might be that they had a success in their previous week. A high quality input might be that rather than having a sprint planning, the external stakeholder or the internal stakeholder is actually part of the team. So they don't need the planning. They can just work with them actively every day. And the person who's planning has no other duties than focusing on making sure that the team is successful. That's usually the main thing that is the easiest to fix. It's like one product owner talking to 7 different teams. It's like, just flip it around. Just figure out what is the most important product and make sure which team or which 2 teams are working on the most important part of the most important product, and make sure that one product person is 100% available to those 2 teams. And you don't need sprint plannings, because if you have like a high touch relationship with those teams, you don't need to plan. You're constantly there. Every time something comes up, you can immediately solve it and discuss it, and it doesn't actually need like some weird planning scenario.
I don't know exactly where it came from, that the idea that we have a board and everyone is just playing a game where no one needs to be there anymore. It's like a little bit like in Germany we call that stille Post. It's a little bit like the silent. I don't know if there's actually a translation for that, but the idea is that everyone is able to put in let's say a little brief, right?
Yeah.
And another one receives that one and needs to do something with that and writes it back, right? And give it back. And they're sitting just next to each other, and no one is really talking. No one is even phoning each other, something like that. It's like, oh, no. I just wrote your ticket. It's okay. Right now, you don't have to speak to me. So that's the entire idea of a team anyway. So you don't have a signal. So it starts with so to wrap it up, it starts with the problem that we don't see signals anymore. We see deadlines. The deadline becomes the signal, which is wrong. It is not the signal of the product or company.
And to really wrap it up and to simplify it, what I get to with engineers is I usually say, look, it's healthy to have an engineering leader and a product leader. Just make sure they're on the same team. Just make sure the engineering leader is actually on this team, and make sure the product leader is also on that team. That the product leader isn't on some sales team or some customer facing team.
You need to bridge the gap somehow.
You need to bridge the gap. You need to make sure these people talk to each other every day and work together. And then you just split up responsibilities. You talk about ownership. I use the terminology rewarding consequences, because that's what ownership is. You don't have ownership, it's because nobody understands what the consequences are. Right? So rewarding consequences for leadership on engineering and product, it's okay if it's 2 different people. The product people should look for absence, and the engineering people should look for the quality of the input. That's it. It's that simple, right? So for the engineering lead, to the tech lead, the CTO of a startup, I always say, look, your engineers need X, Y, and Z to be successful. If you didn't give them X, Y, and Z, don't ask them when it will be done. Just assume it's going to be a shit show and focus instead on X, Y, and Z. On the product person, you flip the switch around. Look for X, Y, and Z. If X, Y, and Z is there, then look for absence of movement, right? So if X, Y, and Z is there, then they are obviously going to be productive unless they screw up. That screw up you see as a highly productive team. You expect like consistent output that is transparent. So don't grade it 1 to 10. Just have a clear expectation of what 10 out of 10 and 9 out of 10 are, and just look for absence of that level of quality. Day one, if necessary. So if nothing comes out of a team that is well taken care of in 1 day, in 2 days, immediately take action on it. Don't wait for the end of the week. Don't wait for the retro. Don't wait for the end of the sprint. Just immediately take action. If you want to be on time, you got to be on time every day. It doesn't matter what the deadline is. If you don't know what on time today looks like, and you have evidence that a well taken care of team is not on time, then step in and have a conversation, right? There's nothing you're disrupting because they're already disrupting themselves, so that they will welcome if you can unblock them. And usually it's not them blocking themselves. Usually it's that issue of you think they received X, Y, and Z, but actually they only received X and Y, and that Z was blocked by somebody, or it wasn't communicated properly. And then you can basically have reward and consequences, and you can reward each other and praise each other for making sure, yes, X, Y, and Z, you got everything you need. Okay, are your needs for this project different? It's like, yes, for this project we need more conversations with an active product person. For that project we need more conversations with somebody who is active on SRE or understands AWS. For this project, what we need is an active relationship with the customer, or somebody who is a representative of the customer, because it's a B2B sale, right? So you just make sure what they need, you give them what they need, and then you expect consistent progress. And then you look for absence of consistent progress on the product side, and you look for the absence of not giving them what they need in the project. But I would never plan a project in such a way that how usually people go wrong, these projects go wrong, is that they start a sprint planning and they say, oh, we can't code yet because we need X and we need Y and we need Z, and then they make the entire sprint some form of spike about, yeah, like figure out how to give yourself X and figure out how to give yourself Y and figure out how to give yourself Z, and also please be on time because we already have a deadline before you, right? So they don't see that this is their responsibility to provide this to their team, and they just ask the team to figure it out on their own. And if they can't figure it out, come ask for help. And that's a recipe for disaster. And that's most teams.
Good.
Was I waffling?
A little bit, yeah. You are a little bit on fire today. So, no. Anyway, it was a good topic. I need to go.
You have to go. It's all good. I'm not in the studio account. If you could send us off.
I will. Goodbye, everyone. See you next week, Wednesday.